It's a pleasure now for me to introduce Karen Endres, who works for the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Karen serves in the Farmer Wellness Center and is sort of on the front lines of the mental health crisis that we do see in the agricultural community. She herself is a farmer. I think their milk goes to Grande, actually. So you guys already know each other here. And Karen has also served on the processor side. She's worked in the marketing part of our industry as well. So she understands the concerns of farmers. She understands the concerns of processors. And she also understands the mental health issues that are current and evident throughout our industry. So Karen works every day to make sure that folks are as well as they can be. And she's here today to give us some insights on how you can look for signs of extreme stress or strain as you do communicate with your producer partners. Karen, thank you so much for joining us and for your important work every day.
So thank you. So I know we were chatting a little bit earlier about who had watched the Olympics. I love the Olympics, so I'm a track and field coach in my spare time. And, you know, farmers like to do it all, right? The more jobs we have, the better. So I loved that in track and field, and I think in gymnastics too, they put heart rate monitors on parents and spouses of who was competing. And what I think was really great is if you guys probably today would have put a heart rate monitor on me, as you know, Rebecca's going through that list and I'm sitting here running my mind around my farm and going, I don't have a fence. Where am I going to put that fence? Where am I going to stop people? Where the heck would I put a footpath, you know, for people? Like, so I think my talk comes probably at a really good time, because as you bring that up and to farmers, right, as they look at their operations and how they're going to incorporate some of these things to be part of our safe food supplies. So again, I'm Karen Endres. I've spent the last 30 years working in Wisconsin agriculture. That's a picture of my family at the Wisconsin State Fair. We are active in showing dairy cattle. We have 3 daughters that have all participated in showing dairy cattle and all are currently trying to figure out what part of the industry they would like to be in. Our farm is Endres Berry Ridge Farms, LLC in Waunakee. We're a 4th generation dairy farm. Again, we introduced, I'm the Farmer Wellness Program Coordinator in the Wisconsin Farm Center at DACCAP. I'm a communications professional. I spent 10 years working at Alto Dairy Cooperative doing communications and marketing. So I've worked with farmers of all sizes. Back when I was with Alto, I started, we had 1,200 farms from 14 cows to over 1,000 cows. So definitely understand communicating and working with all different types of farmers. I'm a mom, a coach, and a wellness advocate. So that's an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about farm stress and knowing the signs. How can we identify when a farmer's under stress? Why are farmers in our population at risk? Some statistics on farmer mental health, some behavioral health trainings for effective communication. How can people working in our processors and in other parts of our food industry effectively communicate to a farmer who may be under stress? Luckily, there are some resources out there. There are also resources out there for our farmers and our farm family members. And then I'm happy to go into some discussion and questions. So let's just look at these farm stressors. I love this graphic because it really helps show all the things, right, that our farmers are working on. And I think we need to add biosecurity, right? That little wheel under there. All those stressors, and they're those gears, right? They're working together. And let's say our long hours, right? It's summer. What are we doing? We're harvesting crops, right? We have that hay, we're dealing with weather, all those sorts of things. That long hour, that gear gets a little sticky, right? We're getting a little tired. We're working till 8, 9 at night or longer, and it's just fatiguing a little. Well, that's gonna slow all these others, right? Maybe we're not making great decisions about our health because the long hours is getting a little sticky. Maybe we're feeling a little isolated. I know Doris talked about this, right? With an animal health crisis, how that isolation can become an issue. So you can see all those things that the farmers are dealing with and how when one of them gets stuck, it's going to impact how everything else is working for that farmer and their brain health. Straight from the farmers. So in 2020, we worked with the University of Wisconsin Extension and DACCAP, and we talked to the farmers. We did some focus groups on what are their major stressors. Here's our top list. Time pressure. I picked out that long hours, right? It's time. They're business owners. Many of you own your own businesses or are part of businesses that, you just don't have enough time in your day to get everything done. Managing the farm. I think we're seeing a trend, probably what we've talked about today. And now you're looking at the major stressors of farmers and how this is all going to be so important that we're aware of how any sort of animal health crisis in our industry could impact those farmers. The unpredictable income, right? The up and down. Today, we talked about some solutions for things, but they all cost money. And the dairy markets right now, not too bad, right? But you never know, when is that market swing going to happen and how is that going to impact the producer and what money they may have available to spend on certain things. We've talked about that isolation. I think in our industry as a whole, right? When I started at Alto Dairy, we had 1,200 member owners shipping milk to us. When I left, I think we were at 740 when we sold to Saputo. I'd be curious where Saputo's at today. I'm sure it's quite a bit less. And so the fewer and fewer farms, those dairy farmers, were getting more isolated. We have less neighbors to talk to, less coffee shops, local hardware stores to go to, those sorts of things. Farm succession and interpersonal conflicts. We're working with family, probably enough said, right? Working with family. How do we pass that down? How do we pass those businesses down when in my neighborhood, the farm next door to me sold for $30,000 an acre? How do I pass that farm to the next generation where they can afford to milk cows? It's a really hard question. And it causes a lot of stress and a lot of conflict. Other stressors, financial management, getting those skills. I was fortunate on our farm. My husband and I both graduated from UW-Madison. His dad was a very forward thinker, and he was the youngest of 6 children and told him, you will go to college. He didn't want to go, but he made him. You will go to college and you will go work somewhere else before you can come back to the farm, if you can come back to the farm. At that time, there were 2 brothers on the farm, and dad didn't know if that was an option. And so he got that opportunity so he could work and understand some of these issues. That pressure to expand and improve, a lot of the things we've been talking about. Daily unpredictability, and I love the last one, life, that they came up with, right? And I say it as a busy mom and of raising 3 daughters, our lives are a lot more complex. My husband loves to tell the story about his family vacation growing up. His mom sent him to his cousins who had 15 kids, and he got to spend a week on their farm. And that was his vacation. And then 3 of the other ones came back with him for a week on our farm. And that was vacation. Our kids don't want to do that. Our kids think they should be going to Mexico and Europe, and and their dad's sitting there going, how am I going to do that? How am I going to get time away? How are we going to afford that? So you just have a different lifestyle than what they had in the past. So this slide is a really hard one for me because these are real things. And these are as raw to me as last week, okay? So these are some of the things I deal with, and these are both dairy farmers. So if you hear a farmer verbalizing about hopelessness or overall sadness, you've got to be concerned. Okay, I can't do this. Nothing is working, right? If you're on a farm or you're visiting one of your farmers and they're like, I can't do this anymore. It's not working. Everything's breaking. So this is a quote I got on a text message last week. "We are all bad. I'm still in bed crying." What do you do with that? I'm the professional, right? I talk to people every day. I work with licensed clinical social workers. You get that and you're like, all right, you know, if I could drive everywhere, I would, but these are how some of our farmers are feeling. If they talk about loss of interest or pleasure in things, like they're not enjoying things, maybe they're not going to the concert or to the local festival anymore. Maybe they're not going to church. Maybe they're not laughing. You know, you used to stop by the farm, right? And they were always so funny, or they had their joke of the day, those sorts of things. That's something to be concerned about. Dramatic threats. Comments about maybe I should just take my cattle out back and shoot them. Maybe I should just blow my tractor up. This is a real one we got last week to one of our staff. Makes me want to drink and fantasize about ending it all. These are real comments from real farmers last week. So this is happening out on our farms, and we need to be, as we work with farmers, to help them with biosecurity, right? To partner with them. We need to be looking for these signs of stress in farmers. What are some factors that increase the risk of suicide in farmers? 3 or more severe simultaneous stressors with threatened loss of the land or other essential resources to the farm. It's pretty broad, but it should be. But if a farmer is experiencing stress, like maybe they're back behind payments on their loans or things like that, and they have a potential loss of losing land, right? Maybe it's even rental land. This could be land that they've rented for 2 generations and it's being sold for a development. And they see that as a loss of their land to run their operations. Maybe it's more serious. Death of a child on the farm. That's a real critical one. And it happens, unfortunately, more often than we would like. And so if that's happened, that puts that family already in a different category. Or an essential person in the operation. We at the Wisconsin Farm Center get a lot of phone calls where mom and dad are in their 80s and still own the farm because they don't know how to transition it to the next generation. You all have farms like that. They don't know how to go through that process, but one of the parents is really ill, or the last parent's really ill. What happens when that person passes away? Again, you kind of jump back up into that first one, that risk, because what if there's 6 children on the farm, only 1 farms, the other 5 don't? Are they going to come in and want their inheritance? And how does that farmer survive and keep on farming? Their own personal health. That's obviously an easy one where you could see the stressor. I like to tell people I took this job. After Alto Dairy was sold, I stepped out of the industry and became a personal trainer and did fitness and wellness. And when I jumped back in, I say I had really good experience. My husband's a colon cancer survivor. And so that health, that rocked our farm for many years. He also had a farm accident. He is full of it. I think he was just training me up or something, but he also lost part of his foot in a farm accident, right? So you go through those things and that just really increases your risk. Otherwise, I know you know some of these farmers, right? Divorce, living alone, loss of esteem within the community. Like, right, they had this role in the community. They were running the town board, right? They were running the town board. Well, now they're the only farmer in the township. And you've had all these other people move in and buy this land, and they want to take it over because they know what's best, right? So they know what's best for the community. So the farmer feels like they've lost that. And then substance use. It's where we go when we don't know what else to do, and it really dulls the pain. So we see a lot of that as well. And those are increased risk of suicide in farmers. Here's just some key statistics. 2017, 918 individuals in Wisconsin died by suicide. the agriculture of the research indicates that we're 1.6 to 5 times more likely than non-farm workers. Rural community, and I have a handout that I can leave behind that I worked with the Department of Health Services to create. Our rural communities, our men, especially in rural communities, are at risk. And these can be your employees, right? In our cheese factories that are in our rural communities, they are at a high risk of suicide. Some regional statistics on farmer behavioral health. And when I talk about our region, I'll show you a picture, but it's our north central kind of upper Midwest. They did a needs assessment of nearly 1,200 farmers. 8.7% have at least mild anxiety if they know what it is. We find a barrier is a lot of us don't know what anxiety really is. We don't know what it feels like. We don't know when we should seek help for it. 5.7% at least mild depression. Over half of the people did not know if their insurance even covered mental health. We all know farmers sometimes don't carry great health insurance. If they have health insurance, they don't know if it covers mental health services. But the good news is that last bullet, almost 75% are open to receiving mental health information. That means we're breaking down the barrier on the stigma. And I think things like I opened up with the Olympics, but the Olympics have really educated, right, people? I mean, yay, Simone Biles, right? Thank you for talking about your mental health. You know, we also have Noah Lyles. If you've read anything about him, people have a lot of different opinions about him, right? Because he ran with COVID. Well, I always say the person 2 down could have had influenza. I mean, you don't know. They could have had anything that's contagious, right? He did. He had COVID. He still won a bronze medal, which I think is pretty. He had 102 fever that day. So whether his decision was smart, I'm not sure, but he ran with it. He suffers from ADHD, anxiety, depression, and asthma. And he has overcome all of those to fight and to run. Now I can kind of see from his perspective, he trained, he overcame all those things. It would be hard not to race your race, right? I get it. We all have an opinion, should he or should not? I don't know. That could be a long debate, but he did overcome a lot of mental health things and he's out there talking about it. And that's really important. So what can you guys do? What can you do so that when you approach a farmer or you get a message from a farmer or one of your field reps gets a message from a farmer or you notice something's off? That's the biggest thing with farmers is when you're out there working with them or your field staff is working with them day in and day out. Paul goes on a farm that he's been on for 5 years and he notices like, gosh, this farm was always super, super clean. And now, like, it's a mess. What's going on? There's something going on, right? Or it could be vice versa. It was always a mess and now it's like all cleaned up and organized. You know, we had a farmer we lost to suicide, a dairy farmer a year ago in August. He went to the FSA office the day before because he wanted to make sure all his paperwork is in order so his kids didn't have to worry about it. Something was off. FSA knew it. They've now gone through some of these trainings. They knew it because he was off season and coming in. Why did he come in at that time? It's odd, right? At a FSA, you go in at normal times. It was off. They didn't know why. And it's not their fault, but it was a sign, right? And if we know, the more of us that know about the signs and are willing to question. So these are some trainings and I have a handout on it, but our QPR is a 1-hour online training. It's been, we call it farmified. So there's a farmified version out there and that is offered in webinars every month. So you can hop onto that free training. We Cope is offered by our University of Wisconsin Extension that you can get in. It's a little bit more intensive program. Mental Health First Aid is a national program. There is a farmified version of it, but that's 8 hours. So again, it's kind of a commitment, but maybe if you have a field rep who works with farmers day in and day out and has come across some stressed out farmers, might be a beneficial training for them. And then we have the Comet, which was funny enough, all our talk on Colorado, it was developed in Colorado. changing our mental and emotional trajectory. But that's also offered in Wisconsin, and it's like 2.5 hours. And I have a handout exactly where you can access these trainings.
For the folks online, we're putting it in the chat right now.
Excellent. So mental health resources, there's been a lot put in, especially since the pandemic. But 988, the crisis line, I'm sure many of you are aware of that. That's out there, that's available. They're working on it. I think it has a 70% answer rate right now, so it's not perfect, but they're working on it. American Farm Bureau Federation does a lot of good work in mental health in farming. National Farm Medicine Center, which is located in Marshfield. Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network is a USDA program, and they have funded projects all across the US. Here's where we sit in our North Central region. So we've received a lot of federal money in order to develop some programming. That slide I did on research came out of that funding. But there's 4 regions and they all offer various programs. This is the North Central region, www.farmstress.org. If you Google FirstHand, if you're in another region, you Google FirstHand, it'll link you to all 4 regions. State departments of agriculture like Wisconsin are also very active. Our UW Extension program, and then other local organizations. In Wisconsin, our State Farm Bureau is very active, Farm Neighbors Cares, which is great. We have something called the Farmer Angel Network, which is in Sauk County and expanding up to Western Wisconsin. Little bit about what we're doing in Wisconsin. So this is us, the Wisconsin Farm Center. We know, and we have a great farmer wellness program, which I'll spend a few minutes on, but we need to help farmers with the things that cause them the stress, right? To try to help with the things that are causing them the stress. So we were created in the mid-1980s, and we offer farmers financial and business consultation, succession and transition planning help, conflict, legal, financial mediation, herd-based diagnostics for our dairy farms. That's a really good program for our dairy plants to be aware of. If you have a farmer who's having some herd health issue and their local vet, whether they can't afford some of the tests that are happening, that need to happen, or their local vet maybe doesn't have the answer or not enough time. As our farmers get further out, there's some pockets of our state that don't have as much veterinarian care. They can tap into this program. All of the programs on this list are free and confidential, and they can get the testing done for free. We don't want to replace that veterinarian. We want to partner with that veterinarian. That's a very key part of that program, is partnering with the local vet and adding some additional firepower to help figure out what's going on that farm. So that program is out there for Wisconsin dairy farmers. We have some veteran farmer assistance and then our farmer wellness program.
Question?
Yeah,
Do you serve veterinarians, large animal veterinarians?
that's a great question because they are a very at-risk population. We in fact have basically an EAP program. I just participated in the bid. I was evaluating the bids for that program. And so that is in our Department of Animal Health. And so it's called the it's the VPAP program. Like, we all have an acronym for everything, but it does exist and it is out there. And I can get a link to that because there is an EAP through the state for veterinarians. Yes, you do. It's a very at-risk population, right, with the farmers. And so very important that we spread those resources as well. So in our farmer wellness program that I work on every day, is we realized that there were barriers for farmers to access mental health. We've talked about some of them, the stigma, just accessibility, awareness. Do I know if I have anxiety? Like, is this something I should talk to someone about or not? Like, maybe it's normal, right? What are we in farm culture? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got this. Work harder, right? All of those things. So we created 4 pillars of our program to really help farmers access. it's affordable because it's free, right? So they can afford it and we will connect them. So we have our 24/7 farmer wellness helpline. That's a number like 988, but it's farm specific. It's answered in Iowa at the concern hotline because it's funded in that federal grant money. So we get to access to that line and it's answered by an experienced stress counselor that knows farming. Because you'll talk to a farmer, their biggest pet peeve is they don't want to talk to someone who can't talk about farming. If you can't tell them, if they say, well, I haven't been able to chop my hay, they want to know the person on the other end understands what that means. We have telecounseling. So basically that telehealth, we have a telecounselor 10 hours a month that's dedicated to our program that I can connect farmers in very quickly. Counseling voucher program last year, I paid for 444 1-hour counseling sessions for our farmers. And that's a pretty big growth. It's over 100% growth from the year before. So our farmers are accessing this, they're getting help. And part of it is because I have a group of counselors that I know understand farming and agriculture, and I connect the farmer to the counselor. And so the farmer can start off knowing a little more comfortable. And I don't make them, because my first farmer I got when I started this job 3 years ago, I sent him, I did the standard operating procedure. I sent him a list of 10 providers. I was like, yay, here's your list. He called me back 2 weeks later and he said, provider number 1, I had a conflict of interest. Provider number 2 didn't have appointments for 3 weeks. Provider number 3, and I was like, oh, that was not very helpful. Because I look at my husband, I'm like, he would have gave up. So now I call the providers ahead of time. I let the farmer know when I give them the list, when their first available appointment is, what their specialty is, if it's in person, is it telehealth? So I basically do all that research for them, give them the short list and just cross my fingers they make the phone call, because that's all they have to do. And then we do online support groups. That was another thing when I started, I said, it's not gonna work. Come on. Are they really gonna get together on Zoom and talk to each other? I was like, okay, so I tried it. It works. They love it because it can be a dairy farmer in Western Wisconsin. It could be a cow-calf beef operation in the eastern part of the state, but they all have common things. And then they're not talking to their neighbor about their divorce, right? They're talking to each other and it works really, really well. And so our online support groups have really grown. So I talked a little bit about the counseling vouchers. How did our program come about? We've been offering counseling vouchers since 2005, but it was under a grant program called Sowing Seeds of Hope. In 2020, Governor Evers and the state legislature appropriated $100,000 per year for our farmer wellness program. Look at what our counseling voucher redemptions have done. We have consistent funding from the governor and the state legislature. And that has been really, really big that we could establish the counseling network. We could establish the program. So we've been funded continually. We're going on our 6th year right now. We are not permanently funded. So every 2 years in the biennium, we have to go back. And
We're
our
on it, Karen.
what?
We're on it, Karen.
Awesome. So our
Not being
Secretary of Ag has been really supportive, as well as the governor and the legislature. But as you can see, it's really important that we are helping a lot of farmers. If you want to learn a little bit more and you have time, and I do a podcast, and I talk about, these farm stress issues. Our most popular episode is Farm Life to Help a Teen Adapt After Tragedy. Neighbor of mine, 19 years old, fell off her bunker silo. So she's paralyzed, but she still wants to be a dairy farmer, and it's so cool. I'm gonna do a follow-up episode with her in about a month. And it's so exciting she can feed calves again. It's awesome. She can do these things again, and it's because of our resiliency, right? In agriculture, so it's really important. But we talk about positive mindset, breaking the stigma of mental health, and a lot of other topics. So be happy to answer any of your questions or have any discussion. I will get some resources handed out so you guys can take those with you. And then, you know, follow up, ask questions. If you have a farmer in need, don't hesitate sending them my way. Because that's what I can do is help connect them to the resource.
Got a question in the chat, and that is, so I'm not in Wisconsin. Do you know if there are programs like yours in other dairy states?
Absolutely. That's a really great place to find out is to Google that FirstAn and go to your region. There are other programs. We are not the only counseling voucher program. We're one of the earliest ones, but I know, Iowa has one, Nebraska, Minnesota has a little bit different model. They have 2 counselors that they employ that travel the state and go to farms all around the state of Minnesota. So it's a different model. It works really well. In fact, I've done a podcast with each of their counselors. But there are programs all over the United States. Washington has one. So if you just Google farmer mental health or look at the FirstAn region, it'll connect you into those regions and you can get more information on what's available in your state.
Okay,
Great. Thanks,
thank you
guys.
so much, Karen.